let's do a little bit of a recap from the last time we had class. And we're looking at Bridge, Adobe Bridge. But this happens to be Adobe Bridge 2019. There aren't a lot of differences here, but it does seem to me like it searches quicker, that it brings up images quicker and so forth. I'm just going to show you real quick preview. This is Jackie Watson. I photographed him in Arby's one day. I thought, what an interesting face. And I asked him for permission. And then this is what I've come up with so far. If I wanted to open this up and see what all I've got involved here as far as layers and so forth, all I have to do is double click right on the image itself. And here is Jackie. If I want to look at the original, I can turn that off. Now, that doesn't mean that's the only two layers here. If you look down here, we have all kinds of different things that I did to the image, a lot of masking. But originally, Jackie had this cashier looking over his shoulder, so to speak, had a cup of coffee in his hand, so forth. And then this is what I brought it down to. Now, you can't see it very well in this. I could have used my other way of looking at it with the loop inside of Bridge. But let's just take it back to Bridge real quick. Let me click on Bridge. And if you look right here, this eye is no longer functional. This eye is nice and crisp. You can see we've got a decent focus there. So I wanted you to see that. But if you notice, I did a little darkening. And it's been several months since I've worked on this, so I wasn't sure whether I liked it being darkened down even more or that was about right. So before I have this printed, I will have to make up my mind on that. I like the image a lot. I didn't, let me just zoom in a bit here. His face is in no way exaggerated with the wrinkles or the eyes or anything. So that's strictly the way it is. A little bit of color added, as you saw from the original. If I turn that back off, we have a flash right in his face. I'm 3 feet away from him when I photographed this with a phone. So we have a lot of detail, but not a lot of color in his face. And I added perhaps a little bit too much in. I wanted him to look like an old salty sailor. The camo doesn't really play to that all that well, but the sock cap does. That in the Navy, that used to be called a watch cap, when they'd wear the knit sock caps, black or super navy gray blue. So anyway, when we're looking at Bridge, we can bounce to any image that we might have. One of the things I wanted to show you real quick was looking for images. So right here, I've got Jackie in there, but let's just look over here at the sort. If you click on this, you see you can look for any file by these things. I chose file name, and I'm not gonna limit it to Jackie. I'm gonna put a J on there. And notice over here, nothing came up on Jackie earlier, so I got this new search. So I can come over here and click on new search and just go in here and look at this file name starts with or contains. You could say any file that has a J in it or whatever. I don't want to do that. I want to get a J for anybody that has first name that starts with a J or last name, whatever the file name might be. I also turn on all the subfolders and non-index files. And it says, may be slow, but when you click, and this is the thing I don't like about it, there should be a wheel turning or something to indicate that Adobe's really doing something here, but watch. So we got find going on, and I forgot, let's stop that. I've got find going on, But if you look in here, we want to change this to a drive. So I click on Browse, and let's go down to the iDrive, which has all my photos on it. So now it's going to look in the classic I. Click Find. Look what all this stuff's already come up. So I'm just going to cancel that. And I don't remember now what some of this stuff is. This is a thing I did for class reunion, my wife's class reunion, all the things that happened 50 years ago for the class of 68. So this was like a 4x5 poster, and here's one of their table mats that they had on the table, and this is the other table mat. So we can quickly find things, and notice these are all J's. Jeff Moore, James Mountain, JC. So Bridge is definitely worth its weight in gold when we use it. It's handy dandy. But I love the loop, going out here and looking at fine details to make sure everything's nice and clean and the way we want it to be. Remember, we have all kinds of information over here. We also have all kinds of information down below here about the camera and so forth. So if I go back to Jackie, let's see if we got any information here. I've worked on this in Photoshop. It shows the f-stop. It was shot 1/60th, ISO only 32. That was very bright in there. Camera detail. Like I said, it was an Apple iPhone, so that's also recorded there. Really, really cool stuff. Let's see, GPS. You see the information off GPS because the phone got the latitude, longitude, so we know exactly where this was taken. So Adobe Photoshop Bridge is really worth its weight in gold. We can tag these images and rate them any way we want to. Right-clicked on it right there. So we can do all kinds of things, if you recall. So we also looked at Camera Raw, and we're going to look at it real quickly now, but I'm going to show you also another way to get to Camera Raw. So if I double click on this image to open it up, it brings it up in Camera Raw because it is a Canon EOS 7D RAW file. Here's the image right down here, image 5139 CR2. So we can do all those things that we've talked about already. We can adjust all kinds of things to make it look better. We can clarify it. We can dehaze it. We can bump up the color brilliance in here. Make it, a more pleasing image. Lots of stuff that we can do. We can go in here and sharpen the image. We can just, do all kinds of great things inside here. And this, if you look at the little camera, this is like the shutter inside of a lens on your camera. So it's doing all these great darkroom things for you, okay? Now, what if you have an older version of Photoshop and your Photoshop won't allow you to take it back and forth from Camera Raw? It will allow you to do this. Originally open it up inside Camera Raw, but what if you want to, you're just working in Photoshop and you want to bring it up in RAW and it's not a RAW file maybe, because JPEGs can also be opened in Camera Raw. Now the big difference is this being a Camera Raw image, it's got a lot of data, whole lot of data. We can really fine tune this and make it an immaculate image. A JPEG has already been compressed, so it shaved a lot of your data off and made a lot of decisions for you about how light it should be and how dark it should be and how sharp it should be and so forth. Well, a RAW assumes nothing. So you get to come in here and do all those things. Let's just cancel this for a second. and we'll go into Photoshop and open this up. So we go to open, and we will go to Photoshop week 2, and here it is. So it's going to automatically, as a CR2, it's going to open up inside of Camera Raw. Again, I'm going to cancel that and say, well, you know, I want this picture of Christy in RAW. So if I click on that, it opens her up, because now we can open up anything we want to in Camera Raw. But what if we don't have that ability to click on any file and bring it up in Camera Raw? Well, let me just show you. So I know somebody in here in this class has Photoshop's PS or CC6 or something like that. So here's what you do. You go to File, Open As, not Open, Open As. And right down here in the corner, you make sure that Camera Raw isn't selected. You go down here to where you see Camera Raw. Let me just, I'm looking, it's up here further, it's right there. So if I click on, let's go back to the images here. If I click on Christy, that's a JPEG, and say Camera Raw, which is selected out of here, going up here to Camera Raw, click Open, and it forces it, no matter if it's JPEG or PNG image or what it is, it will open up in Camera Raw, so you can do all these great things to it. Now the problem with the older versions doing that repeatedly, because in Photoshop, if I want to turn right around and go back into work in Camera Raw, I can just go up to Filter and down to Camera Raw, and it takes me right back in there with all the tools again. You can't do that if you have an older version of Photoshop. What you have to do instead would be save this image out, and wherever you saved it to, do the same thing. Do Open As right here, Open As, and then again you would go down here, you would select Camera Raw, and here's a PNG file. Normally that wouldn't open in Camera Raw. Here it is in Camera Raw. So there's ways around of a lot of things inside of Photoshop, because this is a very powerful part of Photoshop. If you ever get in here, it's really, really great. Now the problem is, and we're going to get in that in a few minutes, is that a lot of times you'll make changes in here and you'll think, ooh, these really look good. Let me back this up here. Okay. And you click OK to open the image, and that change has been made. You get it over here and you think, oh, this looks terrible. So you want to go back to the Smart Filter, Camera Raw, I mean, not Smaller Filter. But you notice all of those changes are back to center, which means you can't undo anything. So we're going to get to that in just a few minutes. And remember, also in our last class, we talked about making masks. For instance, on this, if we wanted to get rid of the background so we could put it in another image, that's problematic, because if we erase anything in here, we're erasing basically everything. So we're just tearing the background up. You see over here, it's turning it to white because there's nothing underneath there. Totally nothing there. If I change that background here to black, now we're getting rid of the foreground and it's showing us black. Either way, we're running this image. So to avoid that, I'm going to revert this so we get everything back. And that's a handy little thing. If you do a lot of stuff just while you're practicing, just go to File, Revert, and it'll return it to exactly the way it was. You don't want to save it with all that stuff on it, or you got a mess. Okay, so let's make a copy of Christy. We don't want to work on the background, so we do a Control J as in John. And now we got an exact duplicate down here. And we're going to put a layer mask on there. That square donut. Now we hide with black. So we switch this color, or we use the letter X, and we paint. Now the reason, let me make this, yeah, that's 100%. So let's just make this bigger, and I'm painting, and I'm seeing nothing happening on my mask. Let me see what's going on here. So I'm revealing what's below. So I'm painting with white to reveal. We turn that off and you'll see what's going on here. So I went too far here, so I press X again. That's the trick. Sometimes I forget what I'm doing. Imagine that. And I use the wrong color. So if this isn't working in one color, press X and paint with the other, and oh yeah, this is what I need. So remember, we're not erasing anything, we're hiding it right now. We're allowing this to show, this to be hidden. So if we want to get closer on the hair, we need a nice soft brush. So I right click and I go all the way left, and the size, I need to take it down. We'll look at, yeah, that looks okay. Click up here in the title bar. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. But now notice the edges are soft. So sometimes when you're working on sensitive things like hair, you want to maybe reduce the amount of paint you're painting with, or masking with. So this is taking a little more time because I dropped that. But you see what I'm getting at. Over here we have the black, which is hiding the stuff we don't want to see. The white is revealing the stuff. All right, so we paint in here, and we go in. And obviously this isn't the way we would normally do it. We get a nice selection around something, and usually using this quick selection tool, or the lasso tool. Then right here's the quick selection tool. And let me just show you that real quick as well. So I'm going to get rid of that mask, and I'm going to tell it to select the subject. Okay, we've got that done. Now we're going to select and mask. So now we see the red is blocking what we don't want in the image, and the more we go, the darker that is, and that's okay. I'm going to paint with this a little bit, make my brush bigger, and it's not wanting to get bigger, so I'm going to take the size up this way and just paint along the edges here. I need to make that bigger. I don't know why this new version, this is CC 2019, and some of the things have been changed a bit. So you may have to bear with some of the little idiosyncrasies until they do an update. So there we go. Now remember too, hopefully from last time we looked at this, that you can go down here and click on decontaminate over here on the right side, and that'll help cut out some of that blue stuff as well. All right, and it keeps adjusting as you paint. See that all kind of lights up. You can also, if you have a layer that's got your background in it that you want it on. For instance, if we did this on the surfer image, it would blend in much more quickly and you could tell better what you were doing. But I wanted you to see the masking. I'm going to click OK right now. So you see this mask is the white is revealing, which is in this case Christy. The black is hiding, in this case all the sky and whatever else there is there. If we right click on it and we disable it, then everything comes back. We haven't heard anything. We just temporarily turned the mask off. Right click on it again, enable. So that catches us up on what we want to look at today. All right, gang, this should look familiar to you. We have the barn again, and we're going to do things a little bit differently today. We're going to create what's called smart layers. And to do that, like for instance, this image, we can paint on this. Let's just get something colorful that you can see. And we paint on this like so. Let's take the opacity up and let's make it hard. So we've painted right over the top of this. If you look at the layers palette, yep, we painted right on the background. We've kind of ruined it because if we make a copy of this, Control J, we make a copy of everything that's on that layer. Okay, so let's erase that. There we go. I just went backwards. And that's going to drive you a little bit crazy. It is me. In CC 2019, going backwards is backwards. If you do a Control Z, you can go back. If you want to just go back one or go forward again, it's Control Alt Z. So it's a little confusing. All right, here we go. Right now, this is a destructible layer. If we're not careful, we can ruin the whole thing. But if we go over here in the gray area and right click, we can convert this layer to a smart object. When I click that, notice now down here in the right hand corner, this has got a little icon in it, which indicates that this is now a smart layer. Watch what happens now when I try to paint on a smart layer. You remember the size of the brush? There's the color. And we have a do not enter sign. Smart object must be rasterized before proceeding. Exit contents, edit contents will no longer be available. Rasterize the smart object, blah, blah, blah. So you can't harm the original image. You can put this on any layer that's in the layers palette. You can turn them, any one of them, into a smart layer. Now, remember when I was catching this up for this week, I went into, I'm going to take that back off for just a second. I went into Camera Raw and I made some changes. And I said, maybe we don't like these changes. Next thing we know, click OK. And we got in Photoshop and we've absolutely messed this baby up, right? So let's go back and fix it and Camera Raw. Well, we can't. We have to try to bring the exposure back down. It's not going to have the same values anymore because we really messed the thing up quite a bit. So here's what we got to do. When we come over here, I'm just going to back up to where we opened this. And now we're going to make this a smart object again. So I right click and convert to smart object. So now this is a smart layer. All right, so now I can go over here to filter, Camera Raw filter, and let's just make that crazy color up there, and we'll darken it down just so we know We've got some really big changes here. We'll run the clarity way up, dehaze way down, and click OK. So you saw it run the camera raw filter, but look what happened over here. Now we have a little different thing. This is still a layer mask, but it dropped it below the image because we can't hurt this image. It's non-destructible. If I turn this eyeball off, see, it turns off that whole effect. If I turn this off, it will turn off the camera raw filter. So what that means is I can run multiple filters on this that affect the look of this but don't harm it, doesn't harm it. So they would stack up underneath right here where it says camera raw right now. For instance, there's also watercolor filters. Let's go down to filter gallery, and we'll move this over. And right now it's running a watercolor filter. Let's make this a bit smaller, a bit more than that. Okay, there we go. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit so I can see more. So you see a kind of a watercolory effect on the barn. Let's add another one. We go down here, this little page icon makes us another spot, and we can click on that and change it to a different filter. Let's see, smudge stick. And we can go over here and change the strength, highlight the area, change the intensity. We can go down here and click on another one, and this one we'll call sponge, or we can get really crazy with it and call this one glass, or click on glass, and we'll distort it with glass, brighten it a bit, and we'll click OK. So now when this comes over, you notice it takes a few minutes for all those changes to render. So we really messed with the picture, right? So we click OK. We come over here. Now here's the image, and the barn looks really wild and crazy. Well, notice down here now we have a filter gallery and we have camera raw, right? Well, let's just say I don't like what I've created. So if I want to, I can double click on the filter gallery to go back where I started from. So here's all the filters. They're stacked one on the other. I can just turn these off for now and go back. We can say we liked watercolor and click OK. So it renders just the watercolor effect. But I really hate what I did in camera raw. So I can double click on where it says camera raw filter. We'll go back over here and notice the sliders are where we put them originally. So I can bring the sliders back. I can bring the blacks back up a little bit. I can bring the exposure up, and we haven't hurt the image at all. We'll get rid of some of that nasty blue that we had in there. And now if we click OK, it's going to have the watercolor effect on the more natural looking barn. So let me do a Control-0 so you can see the whole thing. So you see with smart filters, we can keep going back and forth and making changes, and we never hurt the original image. All of these can be changed and changed and changed to suit our needs without affecting the actual image at all. Again, turn that off. There's the original image. So hopefully you get the idea behind this very special, it's a very special smart object layer or smart layer, because these will save your image completely, and you can just do so many things And if you don't like them, you can come back. Now, when I say you don't like them, you can come back, I'm talking 10 years later. You can still come back and change anything here. If I want to go back into Camera Raw and let's say we want to open those shadows up a little bit more in there, and let's just experiment. Bring the contrast up. I do like clarity, but maybe not that much. Dehaze takes any foggier looking stuff out of it. Maybe too much yellow is in there now. Let's bring the exposure up a little bit. Highlights a little. Now let's just say we want to go in and really fine tune some of the colors. Well, we can go over here in what's called HSL, which is hue saturation and light or luminance. So we click on that, and here you see them. Luminance, saturation, hue. Hue means color. That's how saturated the color is. This is how light the color is. So you can, experiment and see. We're changing the barn light. This is making the reds lighter. The orange, lighter, darker. Yellows, it's in the grass. We can make that darker or lighter. The green for the trees. Oops, got to click on it. Make it darker or lighter. So let's go to saturation. How much do we want that barn to be saturated? Oh, take that up maybe a little bit. The yellows in the grass, now we'll take it down a little bit more. So we're killing a lot of that yellow that was in there, neutralizing the green. So now the actual color. Red, maybe something like that. Orange in it. So there we go. Make it really red, more orange. Yellows again, your grass. Let's take it up again. So the grass here looks a lot better. So we click OK. Comes over here to Photoshop. We've got the more natural colors. Let's say that we want to fix the filter gallery stuff that we've got on here. And let's just say Control 0 there. Let's just say we don't like the smudge stick, so we can turn that off. Let's try turning off glass. See if that makes any change. There we go. So now the only thing left on there is watercolor. Let me zoom in. Yeah, now you can see the watercolor effect that we have. That doesn't look bad. All right, so let's click OK up here at the top. We come in here. Here's the image inside of Photoshop. You notice the watercolor is on there. You see it on the leaves as well. All right, what if we don't want that effect on the leaves? So we can click on this mask and paint with black. Let's turn on the paintbrush. Paint with black. And see right off the bat, I just pushed it a little bit and it got rid of all that. So let's make this soft and not so intense. Right click and we'll bring it all the way over there. Oops, didn't mean to do that. And so now we can kind of bring the original tree look back. No watercolor effect on it, except where we don't touch it. If we want it in some places and not in others, well, we're Charles in charge, so to speak. We can do whatever we want. We go up here and take some of that down. So it just restores the leaf to the way it actually originally looked. They were transformed, and now we're just kind of killing some of it. Not killing all of it. And if you look in the mask, let me just zoom back in. This is how much that has changed. We've blacked and grayed some of that out to where you can't see it. If we have stuff over here that's also affected in some way, we say, well, we don't really like that either. So we click back on that mask, make our brush smaller, left bracket, and we can just bring it back to its natural state. The bark on the tree has that watercolor effect, or it doesn't. If we hit X, we can bring it back because it's all in this mask. Hide the effect with black, show the effect with white. And over here we've got these trees are kind of strange looking now. It's all right. We're going to bring that all back to look completely natural. And just back here to look watercolor if you want. I really was kind of just going for the barn to look watercolory. I think that's kind of neat. We just paint this stuff back to the neutral way. Make my brush bigger. Go up here, a little bit right there. Control 0. And now the effect is pretty much only on the barn. So you can see the watercolor effect. If you want to kill it on there, you just brush it too. If you want to kill it fast, you change this to 100%, and it just totally whacks it back to the way it originally worked. If you look down here, you see that solid black that we just did. I'm going to do just a Control Z one time. Now the sky is also affected by this, so you can paint that back to norm if you want to, or you can press X, put it back in. So hopefully that gives you a clue what Smart Layers can do for you. The Smart Layer is totally protected. It's marked as a Smart Layer with that little icon, and the mask here allows us to control what we did in Camera Raw and what we did in the filters gallery. But I really must ask you at this point, does it make sense to run all kinds of filters over this that you can't undo? Because a lot in Photoshop is about experimenting. It's not just a cut and dried thing on every image that you do. Sometimes you have to look for ways to do other things. Sometimes you have to get down into running some special filters to get little things to work out just right and so forth. And after seeing this, can you imagine how much damage you can do without having a Smart Layer? Because we cannot possibly run all those things in the filter gallery, all of these things here. These are just, let me, that's the mask. Let's just get back onto the picture here and go back up here real quick and do a Control 0 to make sure it all fits when it does come in. All right, so we can really mess up an image if we run this and save it and then try to come back later. But with smart filters, we can adjust it and adjust it and adjust it and adjust it. Those adjustments inside of Camera Raw, those adjustments inside of this filter gallery. We have lots of other filters that are in here too, some better than the others. Now this is working in combination, remember, with what we already have turned on. We got photocopy, watercolor, and glass turned on right now, and all of these are going to have a different look and feel. So let's turn glass off, for example. remember, here we are rendering down here, so it takes a few minutes. Now you see the shape of the barn a little bit. This is basically just a black and white stamp like thing. Let's turn the watercolor off. And let's actually say okay and see what it looks like. It's terrible, right? So that didn't work out so good. So we need to go back inside the filter gallery. Actually, I created another filter gallery here. And if you do, that's the previous one, I believe, not the one we just did. Let's see. We don't have, I don't think, the watercolor. Yeah, we do. So it's right here. If we turn that eyeball off, it takes a little bit. So we can throw this other one away if we want to. Right click and delete smart filter. So we just got rid of the one we just did. So let's try this again. Let's click on the image and actually let's double click on that filter so it's the same one we're editing instead of creating a new one. So we'll double click right on the filter gallery and let's do the Control 0 again to get it to fit. And so we've got all this stuff turned off. We also can click on the little trash can down here and make those go away. Let's replace that with a smudge stick. And let's make this a bit bigger. So I'm holding down the Control key and the space bar, Command space bar on a Mac. And I don't really see much of any effect on the image. That's because the little eyeball's not turned on. There's always something. Okay, let me see this stroke size. Let's make it smaller. And stroke detail. And softness up a little bit. And we click OK. So now it's got the palette knife only running on it. Again, we don't have a new filter gallery created, but if we click on here, or I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that. Let's undo that real quick. Don't want to see that right now. I'll explain that in a few minutes. Let's click on the filter gallery from up here, not from down here. And this is going to create yet another line down there, but that's okay. We're going to turn these off. We're just going to click the trash can, turn that stuff off, and let's say we want rough pastels. Let's do a Control 0 so we can see. The eyeball has to be turned on. So that really made some changes. Like or don't like, you can change the strength of it. The scaling can be backed down a little bit. It's got a nice effect here and there, but it's not anything to write home about, is it? Let's just cancel this. We can put it on there just to see what it looks like, because we created yet another filter gallery. So if I click that eyeball, you'll see that goes back away. And yeah, these can be time consuming because you're changing every pixel in the image when these things are on. So let me just show you another filter, and I haven't used it in ages, but I think it's worth revisiting. Now it's really, with all these turned on, it may be pretty wacky, but you go to filter. Let's try distort. I don't remember exactly where this is. I'm pretty sure it's not under stylized oil paint, under stylized. Now, this is a very interesting filter. It puts curve sort of thing inside the image. Let's make this smaller so we can see what it's doing. Scale. You can really twirl the pixels, so to speak. I'm just going to click OK. And you see with the kind of texture that even the clouds have now. It's a very interesting feel that it can put into an image. If you had tall grass, it could be really cool. And we can turn these others off real quick. When I say quick, that's might be an exaggeration. But we'll turn them both off. It honked at me because the other one was busy still yet and didn't want me to do that. So now we just have the oil paint on there. So you see what it did to the texture everywhere. And remember, we can knock this oil paint off, kill some of it by using that mask. But we can go right back in there to oil paint again, double click right on oil paint, and just say, we're going to scale this thing down. Click OK. And now it's a little bit weaker. And then we can go over here in the clouds and paint a little bit of that. You'll see we're painting that on stronger. I painted with black to hide it. Now, anything that's below here, any other filters I run, it's going to mask the effects of them off as well. That's the downside to using this. And I'm going to show you how we get around that. So we just take that all down. Let's just turn on Control 8 or Control 0, I'm sorry, and we can get it all much faster this way. So we'll kill it on the clouds. So there we go. So now if we zoom in on the grass, you'll see the squirrely distortions, and you can really fine tune those if you want to. Remember, we can partially kill that. We can drop the opacity down and make this go away a bit. Let's go zoom in. See how it's faded a lot now? Let's just concentrate on this one. So we just paint and paint and paint until it just starts coming back to being normal. If we do it faster, they were really killing the whole effect on that board. This board. So you can control very nicely through here. But what if we say, there's a lot of other changes I'd like to make, but now my mask is really clouded in and only certain things are going to show and some of them are hidden. Well, you can actually take every layer that you've got and put everything compressed into one layer that's brand new. So if we had 10, 20, 30 layers, we can take all of those and combine them and put them into one layer. Now keep in mind, we only have one layer because we only have one eyeball right here. This is the mask, and these are filters that we've run on this image. But remember, it's a smart layer, but there's only one. But what if we did an adjustment layer? Let's just turn on, let's get some more brightness contrast in the image. So we go to brightness contrast under adjustments. If that's not open, go to window, adjustments, and then these will come up. So I'm going to do a brightness contrast. Notice automatically anything that's an adjustment panel gives us a mask automatically. All right, so let's darken it just a little bit, but let's bump the contrast a little bit. All right, so we got that done. Now let's just look at it and say, you know, I like the contrast pretty much everywhere, but maybe the tree is getting darker again. So remember, we can either fill this with black and paint in the white, or we can paint with black right now. Let's switch that, or use X, turn on the old paintbrush, and let's do this a little bit less than 100%, and we can lighten this part back up, knock that contrast brightness back off just this part wherever it's painted, right? Remember, because black hides the effect we did, white reveals. So all of this has the brightness and contrast on it. All right, let's say we want to maybe, I don't know, let's go to the color adjustment layer and see if we can't just bump this a little bit in saturation. So we, run the colors up a little bit. Or remember, we can just undo this, go right down here, this little thing here, and click that, and it brings everything back to center. I like that feature a lot. Let's say instead of just bumping that saturation, we want to click on the little hand that measures the color. We come out here and click, and we get this bracketed area here that shows us what all's involved in here. And we can go left to darken that green, or we can go right to brighten it. So let's just take that down a smidgen, right, say like right there. Now remember, it affects the tree too because it's green. But now let's bump it up and see. Yeah, let's do that. So now we've got this. It's just, it's not heavy-handed. It's just a light one. So, let's say now I want to see what this all looks like combined. And I mentioned a while ago, we can turn all of this into one single layer with all of this stuff that we have here combined. To do that, we hold down the Control key, the Alt key, the Shift key, and press the letter E on the keyboard. That gives us this brand new layer over here that has everything already in it. Okay, but notice it's not a smart layer anymore. It's just a regular layer, but it contains everything we did. So if I turn this off, no change, obviously, because that's on top of everything anyway. So if we turn that off, let's just turn everything back on. I think that'll show it better than having everything turned off. Let me do that again. I didn't get everything. All right, so if I turn that off, you see it's just exactly the same because it copied everything that's below it. So if we want to continue working from this, we can. We can keep adding layers on top of this, or we can still go back and adjust any of the other layers, but if we do that, it's not going to show because this one's turned on. So you can turn that off. You can go back in here, and let's just take this up a lot. And now if we turn this on, you see what we copied or combined a while ago. It doesn't have that change anymore, right? So that's with the change that we just made. And if I turn it back into the combo layer and everything combined, then you see the way that it was. So you can go ahead and continue to work on this smart layer if you want to, or we can always combine and go from there. So a lot of times I'll go in stages and I'll make a lot of improvements or a lot of changes, and then I'll do the Control Shift I, or E, I'm sorry, Control Alt Shift E, and I will, and that's on the Macintosh, it's Command Option Shift E. So it gives us a great way to go ahead and combine those things and move forward. We can always just keep on going if we want to that way. Another thing that we can do, if we want a regular layer, for example, out of this layer right here, it's a smart layer. So if I did a Control J to make an exact duplicate of it, that's what we're going to get. Control J, and if I move this up, no, we didn't get anything. There it is. Yes, there's the exact copy. Let me move that out. We're getting too many things there now. So a lot of times we don't want an exact copy of the smart layer. Instead, we want a regular layer. I just hit delete to get rid of the whole thing. So what if we do want just a regular copy of what we have here? We don't want to turn around and make it a smart layer again. We just want a regular layer of what we have. So what you can do is Control A, that turns the marching ants on all the way around the image. Control A for control, select all. So then you do a Control C to copy everything to the Photoshop clipboard. It's a virtual clipboard. And then you do a Control V, which pastes that into a new layer. So if I turn that off and on, you see it's an exact duplicate of this, but it's no longer a smart layer. You don't see the little icon in there. So you can kind of put that back in your mind somewhere. If you ever need that, use the Control All, Control A, Control C, Control V. It works in word processing and just about every other kind of software out there. It does the same thing. Control A selects everything, Control C copies everything, Control V pastes everything. So if you remember in week 1, we worked on this picture and we worked on this picture. And we brought this one over into the other image. This time, instead of selecting it here and bringing it over to here, I'm going to go ahead and bring it over here and knock it out to make use of this background. And I'm going to show you why it's so important sometimes to use smart layers. Okay, so we bring this image over. We can just click right on this layer and drag it up. And when that other image pops open, we can just drag it down and let go. If we want it right in the center of the image, we can hold down the Shift key and it'll put it there for us. Okay, so we need to make this smaller so we can get it all on here. First of all, we'll just move it around. Okay, here's a good reason to use smart layers. It may seem goofy in a way, but a lot of people will bring elements or people from one image and put them in another one, and they may resize that object several times to get it just the way they want it. And the problem is when you do, we'll double click that. Oh, too small, we'll say. And we'll hold down the Shift key to keep, oh, look what's happening to my image. Double click it. Look how soft that is now. Let's do this again. Let's resize it again and see what happens. Take it down there. Let's bring it back up again. Control T. Holy cow, double click it. See, it just keeps, every time we do that, it's getting worse. And we don't even realize it sometimes because we're keeping it, Shift key down, we're keeping it small like that so you can't really see sometimes how bad it is. But then if you say, well, I need to make it bigger, and you bring it back up, you see that if you compare the background with this, this looks terrible now. Well, let me show you how to fix that using smart layers. Let's just go back in history. Let me move this out of the way. And here's where we first brought it in. So what we can do, we know we're going to transform this image of Christy. So let's make this layer a smart layer. So we go over here in the gray, right click, convert to smart object. So now we see this is a smart object. All right. Now if we resize it, let me move this back again out of the way. Control T. Notice now it actually has a box. And remember, if you're going to resize and you want to keep things proportional, hold down your shift key so it does it the same distance all the way around. So we'll make it tiny, tiny. Double click inside the image, or you can just hit enter if it won't work right. Control T, hold down the shift key, we bring her back, double click, look, it looks just like it did when we first brought it in. Let's do it some more. Control T, enter. Control T to bring it back, hold down the shift key, we'll make it really big. Double click, perfect. Let's do it from the other direction. Control T. We'll bring it down here. And let's bring it up to where we can see it. Double click it. Control T to bring it back up to full size. Wow, still perfect. All right, that's the beauty of a smart layer also. You can't damage it because, let me show you something here. If I double click right on this box, notice another thing just popped up with Christy on it. Only this time it's called layer1.psb. PSB. It's a different format. What that is a protected document. So we can't hurt it. So when we created this smart object, that's what it did. It created another layer, and it always stays pristine like this. Okay, so we can't directly affect it at all. And that's really a big plus. All right, let's close that down. It's there. It's still working as that pristine layer that we just saw. But right now we just see this little icon telling us it's a smart layer. All right, so now I'm going to do a Control T again. Bring her down into the image. And let's just make it a little bit smaller. Double click it. And now we're going to just tell Photoshop, we'll turn on the wonderful automatic selection, quick selection tool, and we'll say select subject. Now this could get interesting. Perfect. Well, nearly perfect. And then if we want to fine tune it, which we do, we click on select and mask. And notice it's on the pink, which is a Rubylith thing back from the old newspaper days. We'll put this and say on layer. So now we see it cut out against the layer that it's actually on top of in the layers palette. This makes a real nice way of adjusting it so you can see how they blend with the background. So now we'll just click up here to turn that stuff off. And let's make it bigger. I'm holding down the Control key and the space bar. And the hair has a little bit of a glow around it, right? So we're going to go over here and click on this second one down. And we're just going to run it along the edges. Up here. Just dragging it along. Go down here. Make sure we get in there. Just want that crosshair to hit the background so it'll, you see we're bringing some hair back and getting rid of some stuff too. So now let's go up here and click right in that area, see what it does. All right, now it's time for decontamination. So now let's try going along here a little bit. See, it kind of goes brighter and darker real quick. It's refiguring as you go along. Okay, so I think we've got a pretty good selection here. All right, let's just say okay. Now I'll tell you a little something about using this select and mask. if it's a low resolution image, it doesn't do very well. It's a lot more hit and miss. The higher resolution an image is, the better the results are going to be. Now you see, when we did that, when we did the select and mask, I made sure that new layer with layer mask was on. So that gives us this layer, and we still have our old layer, but notice it's turned off, and this layer is no longer smart because we don't have that little icon anymore. That's okay. We can make it smart right now if we want to, but let's just do a Control-0 so we can see the two images together. And if we're happy with it, I mean, we can leave that mask on there for 10, 20, 30 years if we want to, if we save it as a PSD file, a Photoshop file. Or we can just say, you know, we don't need this anymore, and we can right click on it and say apply it. That will then truly make the background go away and we just see the refined edges. Now we can right click on the whole layer and say convert to smart object. So now if for any reason I need to resize her or any object we do this to, it's going to stay in really good shape. Now this pristine layer of Christy is still there, still totally protected. But watch now when let's turn that back off. If I double click this, notice it's a knocked out version that's going to stay pristine on this particular image. You see we got a little imperfection stuff there and a little bit of background stuff. So when I brought that in, let me close this back up. When I brought that in and it still had the mask on it, let's just step back to that point. And there we go. We can make sure that all the stuff is gone if we turn on the Move tool or press the letter V, and see there's that junk and right down here, and you see a little bit of it. See that like a dirty area right in there? So if we click on the mask, turn on the paintbrush, how do we hide that? My brush is too big, so I'm left bracket. We just paint that with black, make sure it's 100%, and we just make that masked out as well. This little grungy part right in there. And if we want to, shows right down there that there's some stuff, but it doesn't show up in the image, so I'm not going to really worry too much about that right now. But you can mask all that white area out that's there. See, we don't need that stuff that's showing in the mask because we're pretty much putting that. Now you see we've got it clobbered pretty good. We're putting her image down further inside here. So I'm going to turn on the Move tool again, move her back down. Now if I want that to reappear, obviously, now I can turn on my paintbrush, paint with white. Remember, we can press the letter X to toggle those colors. And if we don't see black and white, we press the letter D as in doggone it. So we can just turn on the brush. We're going to paint with white, and we're going to paint on the mask. So here she comes back in. Okay, we good? I went too far there. So Control Z, make that brush smaller, and we'll just do like that. So we've successfully brought her into this image. Much like we did it the first time, but now we have the smart layer. Let me bring the layers back up again. We have the smart layer here, and again, now if I'm convinced I've got this good shape, we can actually go up here and convert this, and it applies the mask all in one whack. All right, so now if we double click it, here it is. And we did definitely clean it up. So we can resize that as many times as we want to, again, just like we did before. If we click right on Christy's layer right here and do a Control T, we'll do the Enter, Control T, drag it way up. Let's drag it over this way, holding the Shift key down. Perfect. Still yet. Control T again. Way down. Double click. Control T again. We're not going to make it bad. No matter what we do, it's going to stay in good shape. I'm going to wrap up this video with a little review of stacking order and a little something on the end of that we've kind of covered already in this video, but I want to make sure it's clear in your mind. We're going to bring several images into here. This one's our background image. So we're going to bring this image of Christy in again. So we're just going to go over here and drop it in. And we're going to bring this picture of this girl in and just drop it in. And we're going to go over here to get this old house and drop it in. Make sure I'm in the right one and let go. So now you see we've got 4 layers, one background, 3 other layers, regular layers. Now we can see the old house very clearly because why? It's on top, right, in the stacking order. These are just like stacks right here, and we can see part of the girl that's not covered by the old house. And we can see part of, let's move this over here, we can see part of the Christy image because all this is on top of her except on the right side. So you can see in the layers palette, let me do one thing here real quick. Let's just move this around here real quick. So if we grab that, now that house is below the girl, right? And again, I can bring her back underneath the old house. I can bring Christy up, and she's on top now. But I can't drag the background anywhere. Background has to stay put. We can rename it and unlock it that way and all that. We can double click on it. And once we double click on it, it can be moved anywhere as well. But here's the deal. I want to just put these things in here randomly, and I want to resize Christy because I want all this to be seen, including the background. So I'm going to turn that one off for a second and resize Christy. So I'll do a Control T. Got to be on the right layer, and I'm holding down the Shift key and just bring that back up here and double click. So I'm going to resize this other girl. Control T, and notice the bounding box is off the screen. I can't grab one of those little handlebars. If you want to see it all, you just hold down your Control or Command, press 0, not O, but 0 on your keyboard. Then you can see all the handlebars. So Shift, drag it down, and maybe a little bit more. Double click on it or hit Enter. Now, the old house, we'll turn that back on and we'll Control T it as well. And maybe, got to be on the right layer. Let me hit Escape here, Control T, and hold down the Shift key. And I'm going to drag it down here and double click. So it's still partially over Christy's image, but it's not over the girl. But I can click because that's the active layer. I have the Move tool selected, and I can put it on top of that girl. I can click on Christy's layer and bring it underneath that, so we have more of this, the surf showing, right? Now, let's just move this around again. And what I did to select that, I hold down the Control key or Command key, and it automatically selects that layer. So I'm going to click and drag that down here, click that one, Put it up here in the corner. Now, what if I wanted to just make a whole layer or just a regular layer with all of these things in it? And we talked about this briefly a while ago. We do a Control Alt Shift E. Whoops. Need to be on the very top layer. That's one of the reasons I wanted to show you this again. If you want to combine all of these things, you got to go to the top layer. Otherwise, if you are down here and do it, you're only going to get a couple of layers. So now Control Alt Shift E. Now we can turn all of this off and you still see everything because it's all combined in this layer 4. So I'm going to double click it and call it combined. All right. Now if I turn that off, all of it's off, right? The eyeballs are all off. Click and drag turns all the eyeballs back on, one at a time, and click and drag. So we have all of it showing, but none of this is combined. Only this layer is combined. So if I turn that eyeball off, the house goes away, Christy goes away, the other girl goes away. So the reason for doing this, combining everything on one layer, means that we can experiment with a lot of stuff down here and then make a layer of everything that you've done. And then you can start experimenting with it and do it again. Control Alt Shift E. And then you would get another layer up here that has everything combined again. Okay, hopefully that explains it. Right now though, if I turn on a brush and I get a nice bright yellow and paint, I'm painting over everything, remember? Because that's a layer that's combined and it's on top. Control Alt Z or Control Z because it's just going back one. Now if I turn all these on and I paint again, I'm only painting on the layer with the old house. So if I turn that on, nothing else is bothered. This is the advantage of having layers. Let's try a different color here. Let's get a nice green going. So now we're on the Christy layer. We painted over Christy and we painted over everything, but if we turn that off, it's not on everything. It's only on this layer. Okay? So let's go back a little bit so we can get rid of the Control Alt Z to get rid of that paint. Now what if I create a layer on top of the house, brand new layer, and now I paint and you don't see it. Why? I'm painting on top of the house. Because in the stacking order, we got this turned on. All right, remember, the stacking order is really a big deal. But even though it's covering that house, it's on its own layer, so you're not hurting a thing. If you wanted the green to be around the edges, we can put a mask on here, remember? The square donut. And now we can hide some of that with black. Sorry, didn't mean to turn that on. So we can let some of that show through. Again, layer mask. Okay? So hopefully this, kind of brings us back home again so you can understand layers and the power of layer masks. So we can go up to Christy's image. We'll turn these off for a minute. Put on a layer mask. And we can paint. Again, we're going to hide this blue that color in here should be black. So if white's on top, just press X. If you don't have black and white, press the letter D. Let me show you real quick. And we're on mask, so let me change that, and we'll change this color real quick. So now we got red and green. If you want the mask colors, which are black and white, you just press the letter D as in dog. And now black is on top already, so we can use it to actually hide. But notice the black is painted here. Here's the mask. So we're actually painting on the image. That's not helpful. Control-Alt-Z a couple of times here. Paint on the mask, and it hides. We don't have that. Yeah, we have it up to 100%. Let's get this side. It's coming in really gray because we don't have black and white. We have gray and white. D. Press, get that X on there. Now we have our black and whites. Black hides. Switch that to white to reveal. Brings back some of that hair. So that's kind of cheating. We didn't do a very good job knocking her out. But you see the layer mask we made. Let's go to the other girl. Layer mask. If we want to knock her out, do we paint with white? No. If we paint with white, it does nothing because it's all there. It's already all revealed. To hide, press X to turn on black, and now we're hiding. It's all about, in the mask, it's all about revealing and hiding. Let's make that brush smaller. So again, we're kind of cheating. We're not doing a great job of filling all that in, but that's, you know, you're going to get the idea from this, I think. Just kind of creep in there a little bit. Not bad. All right, and if we want more of that back again, because on our arm here, let me zoom in, our arm is partially gone, so we want to bring that back. We paint with white. And over here also. So hopefully, again, trying to reinforce what this does. The stacking order and masking. All right. That wraps up this video, gang. I'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.